And welcome back to a Standard Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jono.
And I'm your host, Chris. And this week we're talking about the most important position in football. And we're about 30 days away from the draft. So guess what we're going to talk about today?
The quarterback. So you got plenty of prospects here for the NFL draft in terms of quarterback. You can argue that the quarterback position is the strongest position in this draft next to the wide receiver. Obviously, wide receiver depth is huge, and we'll be going into that episode in the next couple of weeks. But after that, some offensive linemen, but I think the quarterback is probably some of the best talent that we've seen since probably the Joe Burrow depth of quarterback draft.
Well, I think that let's not confuse talent for need. Okay, so I think that there's a lot more need at the top of the draft this year from teams that need quarterbacks.
Fair enough.
Which is why we're hearing about a lot of the hype from the top 4 picks, possibly going quarterback. In years past, there have been a lot of those teams that are up top that have a younger quarterback and that are drafting more defensive positions or an offensive position other than quarterback. I still think that there's a lot of great offensive linemen in this draft, and I think there's a lot of good edge rushers in this draft. I just don't think that there's a ton of need at the top there, which is why we're seeing so much action happening up top, which is why Minnesota is potentially going to be trading up into the 4th pick to go to a 4th straight quarterback. But it is the most important position, and there is talent in this draft, especially up at the top. I think that there's a lot of guys with a lot of college experience. I mean, a lot of these guys have been in college for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the reason I bring it up is probably, like you said, it's the most important position on the field.
For sure.
We've seen plenty of teams that have talent that without the quarterback position, they just can't get the job done. They can't win ball games. But what I mean is there's just a depth of guys that are at average or above. We're not talking about the list of backup quarterbacks. And when I say a lot, I mean, we're talking about 4 to 5 guys that could start in the NFL if thrown into not to say that they should, but they could be thrown into it. Where after that, yes, it does fall off. The guys that need to play behind somebody and possibly just perennial backup quarterbacks.
Yeah, and in all honesty, I think a lot of these guys that we're talking about is the only reason we're talking about them is because they're such a need at quarterback. And these teams have already indicated that they're going to go and draft a quarterback. I mean, you look at the Patriots, they don't have, other than Jacoby Brissett, they don't have a quarterback on that roster who they're comfortable going with. Washington just gets rid of their starting quarterback from last year. Now we have Justin Fields getting moved out of Chicago. And then Kirk Cousins not signing, and they signed Sam Darnold. So are the Vikings invested on Sam Darnold for being a starter for a year or two to let a guy develop?
I mean, they're not going to tip their hand, but I don't think that's the case. Let's be honest.
I mean, I don't think that's the case either. But, you can argue with what you want. Sam Darnold played effective in the snaps that he played with San Francisco last year.
Well, and we can't forget that Sam Darnold was coveted coming out of college anyway at that point. So,
and there's a point to that is that these guys that have a lot of talent in college need some time to develop into good quarterbacks.
Well, I think every quarterback should be developed into a good quarterback. Look at any of the number 1 picks that have come out there and how they're playing. I mean, look at Baker Mayfield, for example.
Sure.
That guy could have done a fantastic job and not had that blemish of the Browns on his career had he gone into a program and sat behind somebody for at least 1 year.
Yeah, but for every one of him, there's Zach Wilson.
Yep, but it's not also sitting behind people, I think, either.
Geno Smith.
I don't think it's also sitting behind people. I think it's the quarterback coaching and the coaching tree that they're playing into plays a massive role into some of the development of these quarterbacks.
Oh, for sure.
Some of these people are just expecting these college kids to come in, and I call them kids because they are, to come in and expect them to just be balls to the wall, ready to go, NFL caliber players. And that's not going to be the case without proper coaching and proper teaching of the NFL game.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. Like these, and I did a short on this week, and we'll talk about some of these guys that are later down on this tier of quarterbacks that we're going to talk about, is they are going to probably end up in that position with a good coaching staff, behind a veteran, letting develop for a year or two, and then being able to be a starter in this league for a long time after that.
Well, and their careers may be longer on top of it because of that. Geno Smith's a perfect example.
Right. And so now, looking at the top guys in this draft, they're going to be thrown into the fire. And some of them on good teams that they built up around them, and some of them on not so good teams that don't have a lot of talent around them.
Well, let's talk about the overall projected number 1 pick here, who's on a team that has the Chicago Bears decided to put a ton of weapons around to draft a quarterback at this number 1 spot.
Sure.
And Caleb Williams is the projected number 1 pick here. He's 6'1", 214 pounds. He is overall on everybody's board pretty much the number 1 guy, even though and number 2 and 3 has kind of been interchanging. I've watched a lot of film on him. I've listened to people talk about him. Let me bring up a couple things on him here, and I know you got his stats down, so chime in. But the guy's got great quick release, and he's got a strong arm. Not the strongest of the bunch of this group here, but he's got a strong arm. He has good reaction to defense. I mean, we were just talking about this earlier that his rushing yardage may not be that high total-wise, but his ability to throw on the run and his reaction to the rush is very good, which is why he's thrown for so many yards. And he's able to extend the play, which goes hand in hand with what I just said. Now, there are some negatives to him. He tends to move the pocket a lot often.
Yep.
He tends to try and make the play with his arm and not take it with his legs. And he also tends to try and throw on the run more often than in the pocket. So he's somebody that we've seen with a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL. These young guys that come in don't feel comfortable in the pocket. It's not a good sign to me that he doesn't feel comfortable in the pocket at the almost Pac nothing now, but the division
formerly known, the division formerly known as the Pac-12,
that he doesn't feel like comfortable in the pocket there.
Yeah,
like if you're shifting your pocket around and causing yourself to make plays on the move like that, it's not going to be a high success rate play in the NFL, and we've seen it with quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, because he throws on the run, and I don't think he's the most accurate quarterback on this list.
He's accurate on the run. I will say that he's very accurate,
which I think is going to help him with Keenan Allen being there, because I think Keenan Allen is one of those backyard wide receiver kind of guys that's always going to be open, always going to find zones. DJ Moore is going to be a big play threat for you. There's tons of weapons around there.
But don't forget DeAndre Swift out the backfield helps too.
Yeah, and they got 2 other solid running backs there that can actually run the football. It's all going to be around that offensive line. And again, the college rush is much different than the NFL rush. And his athleticism that was able to scramble and extend plays doesn't always translate to the NFL.
Yeah.
And he's not Anthony Richardson kind of speed and breakaway mobility.
And size.
Yes, he's mobile enough, and he's good. And his stats, there's a lot of concerns that I have for him going into the NFL, and his stats are not one of them. Like, he's thrown up monster stats. You look at 2022, when he threw up 4,500 yards, had 42 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions in the Pac-12, and also added 10 touchdowns on the ground. And he took a big step back this year from his Heisman year. And where he only threw for about 3,600 yards, 32 touchdowns, 30 touchdowns in the air, 5 interceptions, added another 11 touchdowns on the ground. His rushing numbers went down from his junior season, but his ego is what kills me the most.
Oh my gosh!
And that you want to know a way to lose the locker room is the premier perennial Pro Bowl wide receiver comes to watch your pro day and you don't acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Like, your ego, like, this is a team game. This is not about you. You, as a leader on that team, need to be able to come in there and command those guys to win games. Are you going to be that guy because you want a piece of ownership on the teams that you want? I mean, there's a lot of talks with his agents wanting him to get moved out of Chicago and not allow Chicago to draft him. Fine. Where are you going to go? The Patriots?
We could see an Eli Manning situation here.
Right.
Very easily.
But where are you going to go? Like, look at the top 4 teams. Do you like any of those situations? So you're going to force a team to trade up into a number 1 pick to come get you?
I know what he wants to go play for Cliff Kingsbury, who he just played for.
Who he didn't talk to? I mean, if you've read any of the reports in college, the only person that he talked to was Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, but that's the problem. Is I just read a report today too about
his coaches came out and said that
his lack of eye contact with all these scouts and team scouts and everything like that, especially coming out of Chicago. And they were saying his lack of eye contact during conversations and everything, and it came out to be, and I don't know the validity of this, but pretty much the story came out to be that people need to earn his respect for them for him to look them in the eye.
All right. Well, I mean, again, it plays into the fact that this guy's got an ego on him, and the talent is there. I mean, it's undeniable, and we've seen it for 2-3 years now in the USC. There's the other big thing that I talked about in a couple weeks ago when I talked about Caleb Williams is that they played 4 ranked opponents this year.
Mm-hmm.
He lost all of those games.
Yeah.
And he lost to USC or UCLA, who was not ranked at all.
Yeah, but see, I don't put as much water into that glass because UCLA USC rivalry is pretty big.
He got shut out against ASU in the first half. They end up whooping on ASU in the second half for sure. But this is something that, I mean, talk about the playmakers around him all you want. It's USC. They have playmakers at the wide receiver position. They're going to have, a top 15 wide receiver in this draft.
Yeah, Brendan Rice. They had Jerry Rice's son.
Yeah, and they're going to have a top 10 running back in this draft. So he had talent around him from this draft class of skill positions.
Yeah.
The amount of 3 and outs that he had in college, the amount of times he put, and you talk about USC's defense all you want, but if your defense is out there really, really quickly because you are trying to extend plays and you throw incompletions, and Colorado is a great example. He let Colorado hang around in that game. Mm-hmm. And they came back and pushed him into a great overtime game. I mean, that was one of the best games in college football last year.
Shouldn't have been a
game. It should not have been a game. And he let them hang around into that game. And so there are decision-making questions that I have from him, but he's going to be the number 1 overall pick.
But here's the thing, and we can go on to our next guy because I'll lead into Jayden Daniels here. But I know you've got your opinion on Jayden Daniels being an ASU guy.
Yeah.
But Caleb Williams, to me, he's got talent, but a lot of these guys have talent.
All of these guys have talent.
Let's not disregard that. I mean, look at Bryce Young versus CJ Stroud. Bryce Young, undersized, but ran a nice offense and had pedigree coming out, and he was talented. He had the stats. I mean, he was fantastic. He goes number 1 overall, and he goes to Carolina in a tough situation, but he goes number 1 overall. And then you get CJ Stroud, who happened to be in a better position team-wise, but I believed was more pro-ready, and I believe in terms of somebody else like Jayden Daniels, to me, is somebody, if I'm the Chicago Bears, I want him. I want a guy with some bigger size that can throw from the pocket, doesn't try to extend the play. Yes, he can use the legs if he needs to, but has the opportunities, has thrown to some premier wide receivers because you're going to be doing that, and is played for a program in the SEC that can challenge with some of these tougher defenses.
And I'll even say this in defense of Jayden Daniels is that his time at Arizona State was under Herm Edwards and 7 NFL coaches on that staff, ex-NFL players. He was, and they ran a very pro offense. They weren't very good, but they ran a very pro-ready offense. Jayden Daniels, I think, is the most. I'll actually retract that. Caleb Williams, I think, is the most polished of all these guys. The most upside, I think, is Jayden Daniels.
No, I disagree with you wholeheartedly that, to me, that Caleb Williams is not the most polished. Caleb Williams is the best athlete. He's the best athlete out of all these guys, the total package athlete. He's got the arm, He's got the legs, he's got the vision, he's got the ability. That's why he's the number 1 pick in here.
Sure.
Do I think he's the right person to be the number 1 pick? No. I'd rather take a step down in one of those athlete scores to get a guy that is going to win some ball games and be a good locker room guy and lead a team to a championship. And this is the end of my Caleb Williams rant here. I don't think Caleb Williams is going to be that guy. I think we're going to see a little bit of like Johnny Manziel mixed with somebody else, and he's going to have
I'm more talented Johnny Manziel.
But he's going to have the ego of Manziel. He's going to lose control of the locker room. And are the Chicago Bears ready to take a guy who, like, yes, he's got the tools and everything like that, but to hone him in to be an NFL quarterback? I don't know. I don't know if he's got the readiness to do that.
I mean, you can put all the pieces around, but unless the coaching staff is ready to harness him, I would agree. Yeah. So I think that the next 2 guys, Jayden Daniels, I think him going to an offense like Washington is actually a really good fit for him.
That's where I think if Caleb Williams went to Washington, I would really like that for him. I would like that for the Commanders, and I think it would be the best fit for Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
Even though he doesn't have Keenan Allen and DJ Moore to go to, he's got a coaching staff that is defensive driven, obviously, from the head coaching position, but has Cliff Kingsbury, has a play style that he's ready to play for and allows him to be the hero.
And they're not slouches at the wide receiver position.
No.
I mean, having Terry McLaurin, John Dodson there,
yeah.
like that's not a bad 1-2 punch there to have.
No, I mean, Sam Howell used them perfectly fine this past year. But I'm just saying it's not the pedigree of DJ Moore and Keenan Allen.
No, it's a different style of playmakers.
But you get Eckler out the backfield. Like, he's got the
Brian Robinson.
Like,
they got pieces there. And both of these teams struggle at the offensive line.
Yeah.
So, and this is where I don't think Drake Maye is actually going to go to Washington. Like, I think if it's not
why would they draft a second UNC quarterback anyway?
I don't know. But if it wasn't Jayden, if it was not Caleb 1, it's Jayden 2. If it's Jayden 1, it's Caleb 2.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it's going to be. I think Drake Maye fits into that number 3. But to continue on Jayden, I mean, like, again, Heisman winner last year. I watched him play at Arizona State, obviously being a Pac-12 fan and an Arizona State fan. And what I will say about him is he really struggled when he was a true freshman. He really struggled when he was playing for Arizona State. But that team, they didn't have a lot of talent around him, offensively or defensively. And he really, what I will say in positive about him is year in and year out, he improved.
Well, he doesn't transfer to LSU because LSU wants somebody who's not good
for sure.
Football,
but even from his first year at LSU to this year, huge jumps for him every year.
Yeah,
and that's really awesome to see from a young quarterback. Now, if he lands in the right position, he has the talent. I do think he needs to put on some muscle. He needs to put on some size. He has the height. He has the intangibles, but he is a mobile quarterback. He ran for 1,100 yards last year. He's not going to take those hits. Not from NFL guys.
Well, he can't. And I don't think he will. I don't think, again, if you go to Chicago, say he goes to Chicago in a place where they just had Justin Fields, a guy that they tried to reel in and stop from running the ball after he runs for 1,200 yards. Or you go to Washington, which is more of a run and gun, deep passing type of offense under Cliff Kingsbury. Look what they did with Kyler Murray. They reeled him in after year one of doing that. I don't think they're going to be in a position to need to do that in either position because of the receivers that are there.
Right.
So,
right. And I think, if Jayden lands in Washington, which we all think is going to happen, he's in a really good position to where the offensive scheme is allowing for the ability to scramble, but not making it the number one option.
Well, and here's the thing about Jayden Daniels. He's got good rhythm in the pocket. He's got good decision making, which I think people like most of anything.
Oh, for sure.
And I just want to shout out real quick to Kurt Benkert as well, because he runs a podcast on YouTube. You go check it out. And so does Chase Daniel, the Chase Daniel Show. But these guys break down quarterback play throughout the season, and they each did a little special on these guys. It's a good little watch here and there, but they kind of break down one game each of them had and go through it. And the one thing that they all were saying about Daniels is his good decision making. Like he made decisions at the line, he made decisions after the snap, the right decisions when to make them. He's got good mobility, obviously, and he's an accurate passer.
Yep.
The one thing is they say he doesn't have that zip on his ball that you see from a lot of like these high arm talent guys. Doesn't mean he can't throw the deep ball. He just doesn't have the zip you're going to get from Milton or you're going to get from Caleb Williams or even Drake Maye, who's got that big size. But to me,
that's fine.
We've
seen ton of quarterbacks come into the league that don't have the zip on the ball that have been
and we've seen ones that do have the zip on the ball and they are horrible. In fact, the fact
Zach
that
Wilson, Drew Brees.
Well, look at Daniel Jones at the beginning of his career. The guy had too much zip on his ball for all those intermediate and short range passes. You think Evan Ingram had drop problems. He goes to Jacksonville and has a fantastic resurgence year.
Yeah.
It wasn't his fault. It was the fact that the guy was getting 90-mile-an-hour balls thrown his way 10 yards away. So
I agree.
I like Jayden Daniels a lot. 6'4", 210 pounds. I mean, that's a good size that you want for your quarterback position that is going to take hits from these big edge rushers that you're seeing in your TJ Watts and your Myles Garrett's. I mean,
still thinking he's like 10 more pounds of muscle.
That's fine. He's got the height. He's got the height to build into it.
Yeah.
That's a difference.
Going into an NFL training camp, I expect him to, when he gets drafted to go and hit the weight room.
If he already has.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, he did all his stuff that he needs to do
for sure.
So I like Jayden Daniels. I think he's talented. And doesn't say that I don't like Caleb Williams. You go aside from Caleb Williams, anybody would want that quarterback.
Right.
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 And then we'll talk about the guy that we were talking about earlier, Drake Maye. He's projected 2'3" in this draft here. Guy's 6'4" as well, but he's got the size. He's 223. He's thicker guy here. He's got great arm talent and strength as well. Decent enough mobility, but really the one thing that, watching him and listening on the breakdown of him too is, and I didn't realize this until I watched more film of him, but he is somebody who is, you would say, he's a pocket passer, but he's not. He drifts so much in that pocket, causing unnecessary pressure and unnecessary sacks that we see from young quarterbacks in the NFL who are not polished. That's going to be his downfall, especially being in a place like Washington, if he were to go there, where Sam Howell led the league in being sacked last year.
So you kind of said this during Caleb Williams, and I was just waiting for Drake Maye to come up because I was like, you want to talk about a guy that creates more pressure for himself? Drake Maye. Like, you're right. He is a pocket passer, but he shifts the pocket unnecessarily.
Correct.
Or he's moving to the right when he should be stepping up. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he can make the throws, but he's putting himself under pressure. And he played in the ACC, which was outside of Florida State, and Louisville this year was a relatively weak conference.
Yeah.
And so are you facing guys like TJ Watt? I hope the Patriots draft him and he starts year one because he is going to get rocked. Like, I can't wait for the Jets games this year.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. We know he's raw talent. Like, this is one of these guys that does have some raw talent, and he didn't play in any pro type of system or a conference that faces many pro talent defensive players. The reason why I say he's raw too is not only that pocket presence and that teaching, like that you can coach that out of him. He does have long arm action. He's going to have to learn that too. That long arm action takes on sacks. Now, quarterbacks have done it. Brett Favre, long arm action. A lot of people have had long arm action. But in order, with this faster pace of an NFL right now, I think Brett Favre would have been eaten up a little bit more often than he was in the past.
He would have found a way.
Yes, but the edge rushing position is so different than it was back then. But I think this raw talent, if he goes to a place that has the ability to coach him up and get him going, he can be ready to play right away. I don't think he should. I think this is a guy that needs to sit a year and learn behind a veteran and hone in his craft, and he'll be ready to go.
So let me just say this is like everyone outside of Caleb Williams and Jayden Daniels, I think, should sit a year. Like, I don't think that they're talented enough to go in right now, or they're polished enough to go in right now.
Polished. I think they're talented, but I don't think you're going to find a high success rate. I know what you're going with that. So,
like, I think that they're much better off where I actually think if he does go to the Patriots, like, Jacoby Brissett is a good veteran to learn from. Yep. Like, you already know, like, they're not going to make a run at the playoffs this year. Like, it's going to be a far shot for them to do that.
Oh, yeah, with that division right now?
With the division the way it's going right now, they're going to be in last place again.
Yeah.
And if they're in last place again, they're going to get another high draft pick. So might as well just maybe in the second half of the season, see what Drake Maye, see how he's developed a little bit. But, like, don't get him the reps and get him killed when he's still learning. Like, you're going to put him against the Jets front seven. You're going to put him against the Bills front seven. Yeah. Like, you kidding me? He's going to get, like, crushed back there.
Yeah.
And he's better off sitting behind, letting Jacoby Brissett come in and play. And this goes for everyone else on this list. I don't think that they're polished enough to go in there right now and be a starter and be an impact starter in their first year.
Yeah. I mean, just goes for this next guy we're going to talk about here who's projected. I mean, they're projecting the Vikings to move up. I've seen some projecting that the Cardinals actually draft this guy and make a trade with Kyler Murray. But this is J.J. McCarthy, the champion this past year in college football, the one that's got the backing of obviously Harbaugh, that douche, and his head coach saying he's the best quarterback in this draft class, the total package. I mean, he's a gamer. That's the best way to put it. He's a Baker Mayfield type of gamer. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He wins ball games. He plays hard. He plays tough. He played in a pro-style offense, but he didn't have a big volume of play through his college career. He was a good game manager in college because they had a great run game as well. And I think he could benefit more from playing behind a veteran than starting right away. He's 6'2 and a half, 219 pounds. He's got decent size to him as well. And he played football hard, but again, like you said, besides two of those quarterbacks, I don't see another one that should be thrown into the Wolves' den right away, especially if he were to go to Arizona. If he goes to the Vikings, Sam Darnold is good enough to play this season for the Vikings. And if he beats Sam Darnold out, he beats Sam Darnold out. But I think he's good enough to play behind Sam Darnold.
I think so. Hey, what do you think about, and this just snapped into my head here, okay? What do you think about this? Keenan Allen, number 1 overall, right? Or now, goes to the Bears.
You mean Caleb Williams?
No.
Okay.
Keenan Allen goes to the Bears.
Yes.
Who have the number 1 overall.
Yes.
What would you think about the Chargers trading Justin Herbert for the number 1 overall pick?
I mean,
and still maintaining theirs, or getting here's my thought on this. JJ McCarthy goes to Harbaugh in LA. They still maintain their first round pick, who at that point they're going to get Neighbors, Odunze. They're going to get another wide receiver there. If they're able to move on from Herbert for one of those top 4 picks and get JJ and maintain because they're picking 7?
Oh, the Chargers pick 5.
5. So they're picking 5. Imagine them having 2 picks in the top 5.
Yeah, I could see it being.
And then getting McCarthy and a wide receiver.
I don't think it would be the number 1 pick, but I think it would be enough.
The Patriots?
It would be enough to trade Herbert for the number 9 pick.
Well,
The Bears have the number 9 pick, and you could still get Odunze probably that late.
Yeah, I mean but you would, again, the move would be to go and get McCarthy.
But you keep your number 5.
Yeah, but that's
And then trade and then use your number 5 to trade up.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
I mean, to me, I think the Vikings are the one in the place to do it more than anybody. But
I mean, I don't see the Herbert game moved from LA.
No.
But McCarthy, I think if the Vikings go up and get him, I don't think he's going to go to Arizona. I think that Arizona is.
You'd have to trade Kyler to do that.
You'd have to trade Kyler to do that, but what are you realistically going to get for Kyler? And then
I mean, you can argue that you can get the 11th pick in the draft for Kyler.
I don't know. I don't
trade him to the Vikings.
Maybe I don't know. Then you lose out on the wide receiver, the premier wide receiver. You have a quarterback that can play.
Yes.
They don't have a wide receiver.
No, I know. I'm throwing out all these scenarios that are coming out here. I agree. I think this is a perfect position for someone like the Vikings.
Yeah.
Someone like the Broncos.
Yeah.
Or somebody like the Raiders, if they want to come up and trade up to get it, because they're all inside those the low teens, right outside the top 10.
Yeah, I don't see the Raiders moving up and getting anyone. I don't think they have the capital, and I think that they.
And we're talking 4 pick here, people.
Yeah, we're talking about the 4 pick. But yeah, I mean, let's say he does go to the Vikings. I agree with you. He's in a situation where I think, yeah, he comes from winning pedigree.
Yeah,
and he's athletic enough, and he has intangibles, but. From a college, especially at Michigan, you played in the Big Ten. There's some good defenses there. There's some good teams there, but his stats don't jump off the charts at you.
Well, again, he was a game manager, which is why I don't think the Vikings is the right place for him.
Well, he's a game manager. Then why do you go and draft him at the? Why do you trade up for a game manager?
For a team that wants a game manager,
sure.
A team that wants a Tom Brady. Tom Brady's a game manager. He had some big seasons, yes. I mean, same thing. I mean, Drew Brees, he happened to play in for New Orleans, but that guy was a game manager, but he played in a high-flying offense. Look what they did with Kirk Cousins this past year and the year before that. They want a guy that's going to sling the rock. They're going to pass the ball more often. They didn't go get any big, giant name veteran. They got a 1-year or 2-year deal with Aaron Jones. Was it 2-year or 3-year deal?
3-year?
3-year deal. Aaron Jones. So they got a solid running back there, but they don't go get this big. They don't go get Saquon to go run the ball 350 times and then pass the ball less. You want to get somebody that's going to throw the ball. I mean, really, why trade up to go get JJ when you can go get someone like Bo Nix, who has the same amount of talent, in my opinion. He's got the longer career. He's got the arm to do it because he's got a big arm. Or even the same thing goes with talking about Michael Pennix. The guy slings the ball downfield accurately as good as anybody.
Right.
So why trade up to get somebody like J.J. McCarthy to be a game manager for your team? That's my concern with somebody.
I agree. I don't think that if I'm the Vikings, if I'm Arizona, if I'm that number 4 pick, I'm taking Marvin Harrison.
Yes. Yes.
That's who I'm taking. If
Well,
I'm the
unless you are somebody that likes Neighbors more than Marvin Harrison.
Sure. All right, you're taking Neighbors, Marvin Harrison there, 4 or 5. It's the need at both those teams because both those teams have quarterbacks. Both those teams have younger. The Chargers have defensive pieces. They're not very good on defense, but they have defensive pieces. Arizona has a young defense that at times played really well in good games last year.
Yeah.
But
they already drafted one of the top linemen last year in the first round, so they got
a receiving tight end. So they need a premier wide receiver on the outside, and this is the position to go and get that. So that makes sense for them. But we're not. This is not a draft episode, so we'll talk about the quarterbacks here. But it's not a position like if I'm a top 10 pick, I'm not getting JJ McCarthy.
No.
I'm going to if he's truly this game manager, because I think he's a good quarterback, and I think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. I don't think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback this year. And if I don't think that, then you shouldn't be trading. And if you don't think that as a team, you shouldn't be trading up for him.
No. I mean, let's talk about Michael Pennix. I said he's another guy here that's got big arm talent.
The guy threw for almost 5,000 yards.
Yeah, 6'2". He's 216 pounds. He's got the biggest hands in a long time in the combine. He is accomplished. He's accurate. He sees the field well. Has a really strong arm, even though I hate the lefty throwing motion. I'm just going to go out and say that. Brunell didn't have a great throwing motion either, but he had a strong arm. He could sling that thing downfield. Pennix has that. His injuries in his career are probably the only big giant negative to him. And I guarantee if he had no injuries in his career and he comes out of a season like he did this past season, we would be talking about him in the top 3.
Yeah, if he didn't, I would agree.
And I think that's the thing you got to think about. But I think you look past that and get a guy, and this to me is like Raiders, Vikings, Broncos. To me, Vikings and Raiders would probably benefit the most out of a quarterback like this, and Broncos would benefit off of a J.J. McCarthy, especially because of Javonte Williams and their run-heavy game out of Denver.
Right.
I like Pennix a lot. I know the championship game looked terrible for him, but you look away that game itself, everything else was fantastic. I don't know. He made Odunze a top 3 receiver.
Well,
here's
the thing is he played in the same conference as Caleb Williams. And look at his numbers compared to Caleb Williams.
Correct.
And so if people want to judge Michael Pennix based on the championship game, he got there.
And he did, even in the games before the championship game, he dominated.
I mean, he threw for nearly 1,200 yards more than Caleb Williams did this year.
Yeah.
I mean, the touchdowns were just slightly up, but his interceptions were up as well.
Yeah. But his attempts go up, and that's going to happen. Your attempts go up, your interceptions go down. Yeah. We can't all be Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
So I think, in my opinion, if you're going to get a guy going to Minnesota that's going to be able to get the ball in 18's hands or Addison's hands, this is the guy that I think has got the power in his arm to do it. If you can't get up into the top 2 to get Williams or them, I'm taking Pennix at 11 or taking a chance on Bo Nix. And trading down and getting Bo Nix.
Bo Nix is another guy there that, again, he's played in another guy that played in the Pac-12 and another guy that threw for 4,500 yards.
Yep.
Both these guys, Pennix and Nix, both had more passing yards than Caleb Williams. And we're talking about Caleb Williams like he's the next coming.
I know.
And they both threw for, Nix's touchdowns were, he had 45 passing touchdowns, only 3 interceptions this season.
Yep.
So, he doesn't have the rushing ability, doesn't have the rushing upside.
No.
He's mobile enough, but he doesn't have that. But he's a guy that can go and sling the rock. And again, he's another one that he has intangibles. He's been around on the same team growing with this team and playing for 5-6 years in college football. He's an older guy that comes in. I think him and Pennix have the biggest outside of the top 3. I think they have the biggest chances for success in the short term, not in the long term. There's 2 other guys on this list that I think in long term, the next 2 guys, long term, I think will be the better quarterbacks in this draft.
And Bo Nix, 6'2", 214, he's been praised for being good with his pre-snap reads. You should be. You played college long enough to do that.
Yeah.
Great arm action. His experience in college is a massive plus. Now, his success in college, you can argue different. Auburn was on Auburn's not great right now, and they were in a tough SEC. He did go to Oregon where they were in a good position and should have been winning games, and they lost some bad games and didn't have the success they should have had because everybody expected Oregon to be one of those top teams at the end of the year. But he's used to these high volume passing offenses. And if you're looking to have a high volume passing quarterback, Bo Nix is a very successful one coming out of college right now. You don't see it that often. And he doesn't need to scramble out of the pocket to do it. He can do it the way you need him to do it because he's a good overall general good passer.
Yeah. And I think, and again, down this list, outside of the top four, Denver needs a quarterback. I would say
I've seen Bo Nix's name in Denver a lot.
Vegas needs a quarterback. I can't imagine more than 5 quarterbacks go in the first round.
Yeah, I don't think anything more than 5 because the next guys we're going to talk to are definitely. I mean, you can argue that Bo Nix and Michael Pennix are day 2 guys, and a lot of people have it. But I wouldn't be surprised, based on the quarterback need in the NFL right now, that somebody doesn't either trade up into the first round again to get somebody, or somebody takes a chance lower down to take them one of these guys in the first round because they don't want to miss them in the second.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a lot of opportunities here. I think. Again, the Vikings are in a really good position to do a lot of really good things to their team. And this is a team that really have a lot of pieces in place. I don't think unless you get one of these guys that are ready to come in right now, Bo Nix and Pennix have the talent to do it. We've seen guys that don't look that polished. We saw Anthony Richardson last year. He was not a polished quarterback coming into the NFL. And we saw what he did before he got hurt in the NFL. And he took the league by storm. Yeah, in those first couple games.
Dynasty leagues out there have him. People are clawing if they whoever got him in the draft to try and trade for him.
Yeah, and so I mean, you don't need to be the most polished if you end up in the right spot. I think that whoever ends up in Minnesota could end up in the really good spot.
I agree. I that's what I'm saying. Is I like Bo Nix in Minnesota. I don't love him as much. Like I said, I like J.J. McCarthy for Denver a little bit more. We talk about somebody like Anthony Richardson. Let's talk about Anthony Richardson light.
Sure.
And let's talk about Joe Milton.
This guy's a freak.
6'5", 235. Athleticism scores through the roof. He's got great size. He's got a rocket for an arm. I mean, the last time we talked about a guy with a rocket arm like this was Pat Mahomes.
Zach Wilson. No.
Yeah, exactly. No, Pat Mahomes.
Yeah.
And, Pat Mahomes, that was his coveted tool, he had a rocket arm. He obviously needs to work on when you have rocket arms, you need to work on your touch throws. Mahomes had those. This guy, Joe Milton, doesn't as much. And his downfield accuracy was down. But again, it didn't look that down during the combine. It didn't look that down on times during the season as well. Now, he played in the SEC. He played some tough defenses. He didn't play on a fantastic Tennessee offense at times. But this team should have been better than they were with him running the show. But Joe Milton is a perfect example of a team who can wait a year or two, get a guy like him. I've been saying to you the whole time, Giants should go get Neighbors, get Joe Milton in day 2. You get Joe Milton, you let him sit behind Daniel Jones for this year, learn, and then he's your starter next year.
Yeah, I mean, I like Joe Milton. I mean, I think that's the situation he needs to go in. He's going to be a day 2 guy. I think the situation he needs to go to is a team that either is ready to move on from their quarterback, but are going to let them play out their contract, or a guy that he's going to play behind that he's retiring, like the guy's retiring.
Yeah.
So, you look at a couple situations with that is I don't love him to the Jets. I like the next guy to the Jets, but that's a good situation for him to be in.
Yep. Arizona is a great situation for him to be in.
Arizona might be a good situation for him to be in. But they're young there.
That's fine.
I think New Orleans is a really good position for him to be in.
I agree. That was the other place I was going.
New Orleans is a great position for him to go to and sit a couple of years. And then the Giants are another one that I think is a really, really good position for him to go to, where there's an aging quarterback, or not an aging quarterback, but a quarterback that's just not produced. I think the team's ready to move on from him.
Its contract allows him to move on for him.
Yeah, but is Joe Milton going to need just 1 year? Is Joe Milton going to need a couple of years? Is Joe Milton... I mean, I could see him being almost like a Jordan Love, where you sit for 3 years out, essentially your entire rookie contract.
Yes.
And then you're ready to play.
But I think the difference between I don't know. I think Joe Milton's got the size and he's got the athleticism to go in there a little bit sooner because that's what like someone like Jordan Love didn't have.
Yeah.
The athleticism and that athlete ability to go out there and make plays like that. And so somebody like Jordan Love sitting behind him, it benefits.
Yeah.
But you get someone like Joe Milton out there is like, okay, let's polish his throwing game. Let's polish his passing game for a year. If he can polish that 50%, that's a huge bonus. He would have been a day one pick.
Yeah.
So I think that's where you got to look at it. If you're the New York Giants, say per se, is okay. Like this is going to be Daniel Jones' show. He's similar to Daniel Jones in size. He's similar to Daniel Jones in the way he plays the game. Let's polish Milton's game because I think the ceiling's higher for Milton than it was for Daniel Jones.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think the ceiling is much higher just based on intangibles, based on his arm strength, but again, he's really raw. And for as much of his athletic freak as he was, his numbers really didn't show it again in college this year. No. He played in a really tough SEC. But again, when you're that talented in college, I don't care what conference you're in, you should be rolling through people.
Yeah.
And your rushing numbers should be up.
But look at Anthony Richardson. We talked about it here. Anthony Richardson, prime example. Terrible accuracy. He ran the ball well. Didn't throw the ball that well. Had a cannon too, as well. And played in the SEC. Florida was not that great and should have been better. And they struggled.
Yeah.
And that was all the negatives that everybody had. And the Colts go out and said, like, no, we like this guy because his size and intangibles. Now,
could you see one of these top three teams moving up and getting Milton?
Top three teams?
What about the Vikings? If you're going to let Darnold play this year, could you see the Vikings holding on?
They don't have to hold on to their second first-round pick they just got.
Right.
And just take them late.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
If they believe like similar thoughts, I mean, because we want to talk about Anthony Richardson, how this guy's, I mean, we're all going to be drafting Anthony Richardson high up in the draft this year in redraft leagues.
Oh, for sure.
Joe Milton isn't far from, an apple that far fell from that tree, tongue tie. In terms of talent-wise, they've got the speed, he's got the size, and he's got the arm strength that Richardson all had. And you could argue he may even have better arm strength than Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, he probably does.
So what I'm saying is, like, if he can put the tools together, he's not going to be busy. Like, even Anthony Richardson wasn't supposed to start right away. Like, he wasn't going to be starting right away. He wasn't going to be getting in the games like he did.
No, but he came in, and again, he was really, really professional. I don't want to harp on it. I was going to go back to a Caleb Williams rant.
No, we're
going beyond that.
Let's finish up with our last quarterback.
Yeah, the last guy we're going to talk about is Jordan Travis out of Florida State.
Yeah, 6'1", 200-pound quarterback, average size, average weight.
This is a guy I thought was on pace to potentially win the Heisman last year if he doesn't get hurt. And he fractured his leg. So his injury last year was a fractured leg. It wasn't an ACL tear. It wasn't a ligament tear. He's fully, he's going to be recovered and ready by training camp, but he's also going to get drafted to a really good position. He's going to be a day 2, day 3 guy where he's going to go to a team that's probably going to let him sit on the bench behind a little bit. Now, I think this is a perfect draft pick for the Jets. Like, I think this is a guy.
I like him for the Giants.
Yeah. I think both these past two guys, I think, are great picks for either one of the New York teams because they're able to either get healthy, they're able to learn from sitting behind a veteran. Whoever goes to the Jets is going to be in a much better situation because they get to learn behind Rodgers.
Yeah, a true one.
And then there's more offensive weapons for the Jets than there are for the Giants at this point.
Yes.
So you're coming into a better situation where they don't have to build around you. You can learn the system, learn how to be an NFL quarterback, and then you come into a situation when there's a ton of young talent around you. You have Garrett Wilson and Brees. You go and get.
Hey, I've seen mock drafts that the Jets move up into the 4th spot and take Marvin Harrison.
I know. I've seen it too.
I've seen that too, which would be absolutely wild.
I don't know how they get there.
First round this year, first round next year.
I don't want it.
No, I wouldn't want that either. But imagine Garrett Wilson and him, 2 Ohio State fantastic receivers.
Yeah.
Mike Williams. I mean, it would be a very difficult offense to stop.
Yeah.
Especially with Aaron Rodgers, as long as he's healthy and not running for a VP. So
yeah, well, he's not. He's not that. But yeah, I mean, Jordan Travis, like he led the ACC was not that good, but they were undefeated. They remained undefeated at the end of the season, didn't get into the championship because of this injury. And this is how valuable he was, is that they said that you went undefeated, but you don't have...
Let's not forget the loss they did have at the end of the year in their bowl game.
With their backup quarterback.
I'm just saying.
With their backup
they
quarterback.
They didn't stay undefeated.
They stayed undefeated. It's a bowl game.
Okay.
Well, they got rocked.
Okay. They got rocked.
They got rocked.
But, I mean, I agree. Travis has solid arm strength, solid accuracy across the board. He's above average on both, but he's not excelling in both of them. But he's good on the move for his throws, similar to Caleb Williams. The only downsides that I've heard and just watching him is like a little undecisive at times, and the injury. I mean, really, it's him and Pennix with the injury history is the only reason why these guys are going lower than they should be.
Sure.
Especially as the close proximity to the draft and the combine workouts for these and pre-draft workouts for Jordan Travis.
For what sucks with both these guys is that when the injury happened, right? Yeah. And that's what sucks for both of them is that it's later towards the season. It's going to hurt their draft stock. It's going to hurt their first 3 years of income into the league. But we're not here to talk about contracts.
No.
So. But in terms of long-term success, I think that these guys can end up in better situations because they're going to be on better teams.
Yeah.
Period. Like they're going to be on a better team, coming up with better talent around them, and they don't have to worry. Like I feel bad for whoever's getting drafted to the Patriots. Like I feel bad because they're not going to have a lot of talent there.
That's why I feel like the Patriots should just get Marvin Harrison Jr.
But why? You're wasting his talent.
No, you waste 1 year of his talent.
What they should do is trade back, go get offensive linemen,
yes.
Go get draft capital, and rebuild through the draft. I mean, we've seen tons of teams be able to do this, where you have multiple first-round picks.
Arizona did it. Arizona's the
Jets.
Example.
The Jets did it, a complete turnaround from what they were as a franchise. You get 3 first-round draft picks. The Texans last year, you get 2 top 10 draft picks.
Well, they traded up into that second pick, though.
Yeah, they did, but they also had the number 1 overall pick, so big game changer there. So. Yeah, I mean, like at this point, you go and rebuild. Like their offensive line's beat up. They have decent running backs with Ramondre and Antonio Gibson, but they have
no receivers.
Nobody. Kendrick Bourne.
But they did bring back Hunter Henry.
Sure, Hunter Henry, Kendrick Bourne. But are those elite receivers that are going to make you better as a quarterback?
No. That's why I honestly, in my opinion, if they're going to be if they want to draft a skill position, like their board is like, we are drafting a skill position here. You get Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3.
And then run Jacoby Brissett and take whatever quarterback next year, or go and what?
Get a day 2 guy.
Yeah.
Go get a Jordan Travis.
Yeah.
Get a Joe Milton.
I hope not.
I'm just saying, like, there's stuff they can do here without having to trade down and give up the talent that's sitting there for them at 3.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's options for all these guys in the top 10. Again, this is not it turned into a little bit of a draft show.
We will have a draft episode. We're going to be doing a mock draft at some point.
But the conversation today was around the quarterback position because again, this is all the decision making that you need to make as a team is because the quarterback is the most important position in football.
Yeah.
And in the NFL. Your running backs are great, but the running backs can only take you so far. Like it's a quarterback driven league. You're going to need to have at least decent or above average quarterback play to make runs at Super Bowl.
Yeah, decent quarterback play. Perfect example, Brock Purdy.
Decent but look at the weapons around him.
And where he went to.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Right.
Yeah, but that just to show is like he only sat for X number of games before he started his rookie season. So like sometimes you get thrown to the fire and in a good situation. To me, whoever goes to the Vikings can get thrown to the fire in a good situation.
Yeah.
Who goes to the Raiders with Jacoby Myers and with Devontae Adams in a good situation, and Michael Mayer.
Yeah.
So Chris and I'll close out my comments on here is like, you're going to see quarterbacks go probably 1, 2, 3 here.
Yeah.
Right?
If not
even
1, 2, 3,
4. But don't be surprised. And in your redraft leagues, and I definitely in your dynasty leagues, don't look past Jordan and Milton. Jordan Travis can be a big pick. Joe Milton can be a big pick, especially in those ones, depending upon in redraft what teams they go to.
Yeah. I mean, after the draft, we'll talk about their fantasy value for sure. But, what's made success, especially in like for these rookies coming in, like going and taking a chance on a guy in like the 11th pick or the 12th pick, in the 12th round, not overall. in the 10th, 11th, or 12th round, rookies in redraft leagues are super important. You get a guy that hits, like you're gonna be in a great position. Like you can go and not have to go and buy a Patrick Mahomes in the first 2 rounds, 3 rounds, and you can go and wait on a guy that is in a good position that's going to start on a good offense. And hey, here you are, and now you're the first 4 weeks of the season, Anthony Richardson looked like anyone that had him on the team was going to win a championship based on where they drafted him.
Exactly.
So it could be a steal, for you. So, again, when the draft happens and these guys actually land on some spots, we'll have a little bit more of an opinion on the value of all these guys. We just kind of wanted to give you a preview of all the rookies that we think are going to have value coming into the draft and coming from a fantasy perspective. The value of all these guys.
Yeah, and our thoughts on these, because I know there's a lot of people out there that love the NFL and love fantasy football, but don't necessarily take a deep dive into college football at all. So a little bit of more information on these guys. Now, coming up, we are going to do a wide receiver episode because that is the highest value position in this and deepest position here for this coming draft. We'll also do a running back and tight end hybrid episode as well because the talent there is not as deep. But we do want to talk about a little bit about Brock Bowers and some of the running backs around the college programs that are coming out into the draft. Okay. Now, we will be doing a live draft reaction. We may not both be in person because we do travel for work at times, but one of us will be here in the studio. The other one will be traveling. We're going to do a live reaction, at least for the top 10 picks. We'll do our whole first round recording, but if we just happen to want to stay up and just go back and forth on what our thoughts are, we'll do the full first round, but definitely the top 10, top 15 picks, especially because some of these value players that are there, live reactions and our thoughts after each pick. And then we will be breaking down and starting our mock drafts and our team breakdowns like we did this previous year. Go back to our channel, kind of get an idea, kind of get a flavor for what we were giving out to you guys last year. We're going to be doing the same thing. If you want to see something different, drop a comment. We're happy to cater to our fans here and cater to our listening base. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification button so you get all the drops when we do it. We are hitting shorts with a lot of these players left and right. Jordan Travis one is out. We did an Adonai Mitchell 1-2 as well earlier this week. So keep an eye out for them. We're going to be doing them all the way up until the draft. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
See you next time.